Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jane Hewitt and I'm the Capability Building Coordinator at Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand are part of the Info Exchange Group, a not-for-profit social enterprise that tackles the biggest social challenges through the smart and creative use of technology. And for those of you who haven't attended a webinar session with us before, Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand facilitates an annual training calendar of online webinars, workshops, boot camps and webcons to help the social sector upskill in all things digital. And you can check out our training and education menu on the websites for more events coming up online. So welcome today to the webinar, You've Got the Power, an introduction to Microsoft Power Automate with Lucy and Colin Daly from the IT team. And just before we begin today, we'll start with a bit of housekeeping. All lines are muted, so if you have any technical issues, please type them into the questions box on your GoToWebinar panel and I should be able to assist. If you have any questions during the session, please also type them into the questions box and Lucy and Colin should be able to answer them in the Q&A sessions, which we'll be doing throughout the webinar. And please note that your comments and questions will not appear to the entire group. If you're on a Wi-Fi connection and have multiple programs open, this can sometimes affect the quality of the audio and video of the webinar. So please could you close any programs that you're not using. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and you'll get a link to the slides and the recording towards the end of today. Before we start, I'd also like to remind you that we do send out a quick survey at the end of this webinar. So if you could take a few minutes to fill that in, that would be much appreciated. So that's all from me. I will pass over to Lucy and Colin to get things started.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for the intro, Jane. Yes, thanks everyone for attending. Some of you may have attended some of the IT team's webinars before. Others, it may be your first time, and we do welcome you and hope you get a good amount out of the time that you're sacrificing to be here. Yeah, so this is You've Got the Power. I didn't come up with the name. Did you, Lucy? Because I don't.
I did not, but it's definitely true.
Maybe it's you, Jane. It's a good name. If you can get a pun into the title of the webinar, you seem to be winning. But yeah, it's a good one. So my name's Colin Daly. I'm General Manager at the IT team. And we'll talk a little bit about the IT team a little bit later. And Lucy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Right, so I'm Lucy Rees. I am someone who is passionate about processes and essentially giving people no excuse not to follow them. So Power Automate is something that I'm very passionate about and have gotten heavily behind at the IT team. So all of the demos and things that you see today are things that I've built. I'm not a techie, so you know, it should give you a pretty good understanding of what you've got the capability to do.
Cool. Yeah, and so this is an interesting webinar. I would say before we dig in, we're going to do a couple of polls, but it's, you know, Office 365, it's pretty clear to most people and most organizations what the obvious pathways are. Exchange for email, OneDrive and SharePoint for documents, and you know, the Office suite for using your applications. Power Automate is one that flies under the radar because it's not the easiest to understand how to start, and it usually does require usually the average IT person is not really interested in doing it. It kind of requires someone within an organization to tinker and try and figure out how it's best for that organization. Ultimately, there's multiple elements to Power Automate, which was formerly called Flow, and we're going to try and cover them and probably focus on the most valuable points. So what we're going to start with, though, is we're going to start with a few polls just to sort of understand the room. We get a lot out of these polls. It gives us an idea about, I guess, where to lean into certain content and parts of the presentation. But we are expecting a wide range, as some of you will have seen when you registered. This is a webinar for beginners right up to people who have used it and just want to get a bit more out of it, and everyone in between. I'm definitely anticipating that some people will find at the end of the webinar that we've gone too far into things, and also some will find that we haven't gone far enough or deep enough, and that is probably just the reality that we're trying to balance the fine lines of those two, but we would still like you to give your honest feedback. So firstly, why don't we kick off with the first poll, Jane? So what is your experience with Power Automate? Never heard of it before this webinar? obviously before you signed up to this webinar, heard of it but haven't used it, as in you've heard of it for some time, been aware of it for some time, play with it, but it's not used in an organization, or the fourth one, which is actively used. Any results? Or they come up? Oh, here we go. Okay. I assume the attendees can see this. So yeah, some good chunk have never heard of it. Some, but the majority, or almost the majority, the most common responses heard of it but not used it, which we expect, and then right down to some which it's actively used, which is cool. So it kind of gives us what we suspected, which is everyone from the broad, I guess, possibilities of people who could attend this are here, which is great. We think there will be something for all of you, yeah, we are, but please be patient, as some of it might go over your head, but also some of it might be things for some people, particularly those at the fourth answer. It might be things you've heard before. So yeah, but we'll do our best. Now, one thing I did want to comment on before we go to the next actually, we'll jump to the next poll, and then I'll dig into how we're going to handle our questions and discussion. So the next poll, Jane, when you're ready. Critical one, are you running Office 365? I should have changed that to Microsoft 365, but that is the common parlance. So are you running Microsoft 365 or Office 365, let's just say? Here we go, that's helpful. For those that aren't running it, you know, there is the potential to utilize Power Automate, but I would really say that if you're not using 365 and you're interested in Power Automate, you really need to take that step. So hopefully this will be just potentially another reason to adopt it. But for those that are using it, great. That was helpful. It just gives us an idea of the room. Okay, next poll, Jane, which is about your processes that you have. Critically, do you have any processes that are paper-based in your organization at present? Which could be a timesheet, hopefully not. It could be a form that staff fill out, or customers, visitors, anything like that. It's okay if you're not sure. Yes, very good. Okay, so the Power Automate, as we'll go into in a bit more detail, paper-based processes are a really good way to think about how to automate, use Power Automate, because usually you can adopt them into this. Okay, and the last one, the last poll for now, for the intro is put up, which is, what is your motivation to automate or go paperless? It's a great sentence I put there. Okay, that's good. So none for lockdown. I guess that would have been different a year ago. Environmental, speed up processes, ensure processes are followed, and more of a paper trail. That's cool. No, that's excellent. Speed up processes is a great reason to do it. Wonderful. All right, let's move on. So do you want to go to the next slide, Lucy? Or whoever's controlling this?
That's
cool.
me.
So how we're going to do the structure for today, the first thing I want to say is we're going to pause in most of these sections, or several of these sections, and take questions rather than waiting until the end. So we really encourage, and if there's no questions, that's fine, or I'll just make one up. But please ask questions, simple, or if you believe they're too simple, don't worry, just fire them out. We'll be the judge of that. And yeah, we want to have engagement. We've got a bit of time for this webinar, so yeah, please ask your questions. It's something that you don't really want to wait to the end because of the different facets of Power Automate. So yeah, we will be pausing 2 or 3 times to take some queries. So we're going to have a bit of an intro where I explain what Power Automate is, effectively what it is and what it's used for at a high level. Then the individual and personal Power Automate use, what and why, and a bit of a demo. Forms, which is a critical part of Power Automate and kind of the entry point or the starting point. Then we will move on to the organizational flows, which we believe is where the heart of, I guess, the benefits you can get to your organizations and the best part of Power Automate. The personal flows are kind of an interesting thing, but they aren't really the value for the attendees here. And then we've got a couple of attendee examples that we're going to go through. Then we'll have a final Q&A if we've got any questions left over. All right. So what do we hope you take away? Understand what it can do. Understand some of the examples we put up. Hopefully we haven't made them too complicated. Consider how those examples and other things we've discussed could work for your organizations. Ideally learn a little bit of how to build. This isn't a training, but we're hoping that you can take a look at it and it gives you an idea of how it works. It's not too alien. And then hopefully you ask questions and get some answers. Next one. So a little bit about the IT team, just about us. So formed in 2011. We've provided and supported and managed and conducted migrations for Office 365 since our inception. The core of what we do is managed services, which is another fancy name for IT support. Wide range of IT services we perform, such as doing some work in Power Automate, not-for-profits, the majority of our customers, and we provide services to New Zealand Australian organisations. Next one. So what is Power Automate? So the big one is it's got another name, which is called Flow. And sometimes you might find the terminology Flow peppered throughout Power Automate when you're looking online. Maybe it was a better name. Some, including myself, think that way, but Microsoft are quite keen to have it fit the similar branding part of their Power, platform, which is Power BI and Power Apps. So they've renamed it Power Automate, which kind of describes what it does. It is a Microsoft product or service. It's part of 365. If you've got a license for 365, you have a license to use Power Automate likely to the extent that you require without paying anything additional. It's for organizations and individuals, as it's got use for both. The idea behind it, it's low or no code. So it provides, there's the ability to add code to it, but it's effectively created so as a development tool to develop processes without needing a developer. There are many templates available online that are easy to start with, and it's accessible on cloud, mobile, and desktop, usually for different purposes.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly touch on that as well. So we're going to be focusing on the cloud and mobile stuff today. The desktop sort of functionality of Power Automate is quite separate. It's sort of automating a different set of tools. So the cloud and mobile is what we're going to be focusing on today.
Very cool. So why consider automation or going paperless? I'm going to throw those terms around because Power Automate isn't about going paperless, but it is a key benefit that you can we can all quite easily understand. So the environmental factors, a big one, it's a good thing to do. Some of you will have it a priority in your organization, some of you won't. I'm sure we can all agree it's a good thing. Improve and accelerate processes. This was the key thing that was put up on the poll. Implementing processes easily. Once you get going, likely you're going to start transitioning processes from existing paper or manual or email-based to Power Automate, ideally. But then in the future, you can likely create them easier than you would have previously been able to with paper and pen and trying to batter users over the head to follow the process. So it's good for adding additional processes. Allowing your organization to function in a remote-based environment. Now, I'm talking about lockdown. I know that's still a thing, obviously in both our countries, but in territories within our countries, it might not be a problem. But really, it allows you to have processes that work when you're working remotely, when you've got staff spread across multiple locations, which is key. And then critically, this is often an added bonus, maybe not the key thing, but keeping tight records digitally of all activity. And we'll give examples of why that's important. So some common processes, and some processes that are commonly paper-based. Some of these things that we've implemented, and so that's why we put them up, and some of the things that we know that others have. So timesheets. A lot of you will have a system, CRM, or there's many terminologies for it. that you use to input your timesheet. Some of you won't, and that's okay, because it's you might be in a position where people only submit timesheets for certain situations. It could be contractors or part-timers or something like that, but they are commonly paper-based or email-based. When we say paper-based, if someone writes an email down, that's not significantly better. It's not technically paper-based, but it's process-wise, it's not great. So that's one. Purchase requests, when we're saying that, is when your staff are requesting that the organisation make a purchase. Could be stationery, could be something big. These are very good things to get into Power Automate. Expense claims, maybe your staff claim travel costs or car costs or whatever. This is another good one. Credit card requests, similar to the purchase request, but from a different form. Health and safety incidents and various other health and safety documents and processes are very good to put into a system like this. Travel requests, sure you can use imagination that there are lots of related activities that people could make requests on. And then critically, a few things that we've come up with, which is new client contact forms and staff induction. So gathering information from people that you need to do more than just store. So those are some processes that I'm hoping you're running through your head and looking at your organization and what you do. And it'll be very common for many of you to say, we don't have many of these processes at all. Someone comes and gets a credit card, or someone just comes and purchases it. And that's fine, and that may appear to work. But without trying to bog anyone down in bureaucracy, if they're not making many requests, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not worth putting them in here. It can tidy things up and help you all know, bring a bit of rigor to the organization, particularly if you're growing or changing. Right, next one. Individual flows. So Lucy's going to take over and talk about individual flows. When we say individual, we don't necessarily mean personal, but we could. But it's more for individual users yourselves. You may want to get a gain for yourself rather than your organization. Take it away, Lucy.
Right, so the way to think about individual flows is, in particular, these are a great place to start so that you're practicing. Automation is a way that you can fail at scale, so definitely pays to get a bit of training in yourself as well before you accidentally send out emails to everyone in your organization that you didn't mean to go to them. So individual flows, as Connor mentioned at the start, so there's the cloud-based way, web-based sort of way that you can get to Power Automate, which is what we're going to be demoing. There's also a mobile app. So a lot of the individual flows have the option to start that from the app. So there's a little button. So if you're out and about, you can kick off a flow. I'm going to keep calling them flows rather than Power Automations. They can be things that are scheduled or triggered. So you could set something that runs every day at 5 o'clock, for example. Often they can be a bit gimmicky. There's something that can be achieved by other means. You might already have a system that sort of does that, but it keeps them all in one place. Like I said, mobile or web, great way to learn. I cannot stress that enough. This is where you start out. And if you do find something that's really useful, you can share it with others in your team as well. Now, some wee examples of this, and we're actually going to bash through the demo pretty quickly on this, but you could do things like setting yourself a reminder. If you want to have a big blaring pop-up on your phone every time you get an email from your manager, you might want to set one of them up. Gimmicky things like getting the weather forecast delivered to your phone each day, that sort of thing. So we are going to jump in, take a wee look at how sort of Power Automate looks to start with as well. For some of you, it sounds like you might not have even been into the system at all, so we'll do a quick wee screen share on that, and then we'll demo a little quick build as well and show that in action. So I'm just going to pop my screen across here. So those of you who have been into the Power Automate ecosystem before, this should look pretty familiar. This is the home page. This is where you start, and it gives you a really good base to get some ideas for starters. It's got templates just sitting right there that might start piquing your interest. And again, if you scroll, it's just giving you examples, templates, suggestions of what you might want to do. Now, we're going to jump in and have a wee look at the templates. All of these little symbols here as well, the little services, so those are different systems, tools that integrate with Power Automate. So if you see anything familiar in here, that means that you can build it into an automation and do some really neat things with it. When I checked before, there are over 400 of them now. I think when we ran this early last year, there were about 300. So they are constantly adding more and more systems to integrate with this as well, which is brilliant because it's not just Microsoft tech that's integrated into here. You'll see there's the little Gmail logo there. You've got Twitter, you've got all sorts of things that jump into this. So you might find that there's an app that's in use every day in your business that this could be really useful for. So back to individual flows. like I said, often these are going to be triggered by a button. So we're going to jump in and have a look at the button templates that are available, just to give you a wee idea of the sort of ideas and things that they've already got out there as templates. So this one here, creating a task from a Teams message. You might be someone who uses Planner quite heavily, and Teams, this gives you the option to run this flow and it whacks that Teams message into a wee Planner task. Like I say, they're definitely very customized to the way that you work, but they're pretty useful. So, and as you can see, there are tons and tons and tons of templates. If you think there are 400 connectors, the number of templates they've got, it's even more. What we're going to do though is we are going to, actually we won't do Outlook calendar, block calendar. We are going to do a wee demo one. So blocking your Office 365 calendar out for an hour, pressing the button on your mobile app. Seems like a very simple thing to do. Example of when you might want to do that, you're out at a work meeting off-site and it's going for longer than you think. So you might want to click this just to block your calendar out. Again, it's the sort of thing you could do very easily jumping into your calendar, but it's a great way to sort of get testing these and be able to see results really quickly. So flow button, Office 365, click continue, and you have built a flow. It's going to jump in and take you to what that actually looks like. Again, if you haven't seen a flow before, this is where the magic happens. So this top bit here has got a trigger. Manually trigger means that it's going to be using a button, and all it's doing is creating an event. So the only thing that you actually need to customize in here is letting it know which calendar you want to use. Generally, you will have just the one most of the time, and then it's going to go ahead and sort everything else for you. So we're going to click save on that. The handy thing about these ones that get triggered from a button is you can actually test them out really easily. So this is the wee screen that shows you everything about that particular flow, and you'll notice there's a little run button up the top here. So I'm just going to go ahead, actually, I'll show you my calendar first, just to prove that this isn't a trick. We are here. I'm supposed to be in a weekly call with the French subsidiary at the moment. This is a demo account. So if we go ahead and just click run on that, in theory, once it's happy that it's signed into everything, it's going to ask you to do that once the first time you run this. We're going to click run. There we go. So you'll see run history here. That'll show you every time that this is actually actioned. And if we go back to our calendar, you'll see that there is now an entry in there saying calendar blocked from Microsoft Power Automate. So pretty neat the way that works. It's fast, very basic. You can get a lot more complicated. An example of another personal one that could be quite handy that Conan has been hounding at me to get created is blocking out the next day. Say it's 3 o'clock and you've got a hectic thing that you need to get finished before Thursday. You need to block out all of the free space you have in the calendar the next day. This is one that the template was actually online that someone else had already made, which is quite handy. There is a brilliant community around for Power Automate, and you can share flows super easily with each other. I'm not going to show you what this one looks like on the inside because it's a wee bit scary, but just to show you again what it can possibly do, we're just going to click and run this one. So what it wants to do, block out focus time in your calendar tomorrow. What has it done? We'll let it run. It should, in theory, pop up in all of those. Given that it is a live demo, it very well may not. So we'll give it a minute. And if it's there.
It's Monday today on this calendar, yeah. So.
Yeah, this is an American time zone, so unfortunately, some of my wee demo-y things. He says he's running.
It's still running.
Hey, there we go. Let's have a look. No, he hasn't. Darn. It is quite useful when it happens. The brilliance of that one is the system itself is smart enough to know when you've got your free gaps and those sorts of things. I'm not too sure why it's not running at the moment, but it is just an example of one of those that is slightly more powerful. So it's not just a gimmicky press a button. It's something that could actually have a really big impact on your day if you're someone who's very busy. So just to sort of get your mind thinking about things that might be a wee bit more useful for you.
And you don't necessarily need to execute from here either. A common thing that you'd probably end up doing is execute from the mobile thing, which is big and has buttons. Is that correct?
Yeah, you could do it from there. You could also set it so for that one you could say instead, hey, I actually want you to run every day and block out my free time the next day if I've still got some gaps. So you could sort of have it on a schedule to run at 5 o'clock each day, and then it would just go ahead and magically block that out.
Stop people from filling. Yeah, because my challenge is sometimes when things get a bit busy, people just in our organization, if you've got a gap in your calendar, people sort of fill it, and that's fine. But at a certain point, you need to have some time to do some actual work. That's my take anyway. Cool. Thanks, Lucy.
Oh, good.
Thanks for building that. I'll use it.
Well, it doesn't work at the moment, so you might not want to.
Look, I suspected likely with this segment, because we're mainly looking at personal stuff, we won't have any questions, so we'll just box through.
Brilliant. All right. So the next wee area that we're going to be demonstrating is Microsoft Forms. Now, this isn't part of Power Automate, but it is such a useful tool that will actually sort of form the basis of a lot of the automations that you do end up doing. So it is part of the Microsoft suite. Again, if you've got Office 365 or Microsoft 365, you'll already have it in there, and it'll be in your little toolbar on the left-hand side. You might have just never really spotted it. It's a very easy way to gather data input from either your colleagues, your team, or from people external to the organization. It's mobile friendly. You can embed things into Teams. You can embed things into SharePoint as well. So you can make it accessible anywhere to people. Very quick to build, very easy to use. And when you tie it together with Power Automate, you get really useful access to the data that's sitting in there. Some examples, and a lot of these tie pretty heavily into the sort of automation, process automations that Conan talked about at the start. So credit card approvals, health and safety notifications, leave approvals, pretty much any time that you need to get a consistent set of information from people and then take some sort of action from it or store that somewhere. So they're pretty handy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a wee overview of the Forms site for those of you who haven't seen it before. If you've never used it before, it's fantastic. It's pretty astonishing. It's just so incredibly easy to use, and the power that it gives you is fantastic. So I'm just going to drag my wee screen across there again. So this is Forms. Like I say, it's in your little sidebar here, the little Forms icon. We've got some demo ones set up here as well, but I will just go ahead and click New Form so you can see exactly how simple it is. This is what you're going to be presented with the first time you go in. You can put a title in there, and then you just start adding questions. And then there is a share button. You can get one of these spun up in 30 seconds. It's incredibly fast, incredibly powerful. So let's jump in. We'll have a look at the time off request one, just because it's got a bit of data in there. So an example, annual leave requests, time off requests, this is where you could get the ball rolling with this. So examples of questions we've got in here: type of leave, what date it is, the pretty standard things that you need, hours, and why. Now you'll notice those little stars there mean that it's required if there's a wee star beside a question. If there's not, then it means that they can skip it. Responses, so how does the data actually look? So the system's quite smart. It gives you some little graphs and things as well. Depending on what sort of data you're gathering, this might be really useful, or if you're gathering just text off people, it's not going to be much use at all. You can jump in and see the individual results as well. So you can jump in, see that this one has 5 responses that have been popped in so far, and you can jump through and have a look at the individual information they've sent in. You can also open it up in Excel. So those of you who like spreadsheets, you can get that onto Excel and have a look at all of that information in there as well. Now, if we go back to here, little preview button lets you see what your team are going to see. So this is an interactive version of that now. You see there's a little date drop down, and you can also see how the mobile app looks. Like I said, they are very, very mobile friendly. This is, it fits it all on one screen. People have no excuse not to jump in here and be using it, really. Now, important things. Oh, you're right, Connor? Just breathing. All right. Important things to know about this, because it is, again, there are a couple of layers of quite complex power that you can do in here. So you got an option to decide whether you want it just to be for people in your organization, or if you want it to be external to your organization. So like I say, you could be, kicking these off with new client forms was an example that Conan gave as well. So you could actually send this out to people externally. One word of caution, just make sure that you have a field on there asking them who they are, because the system's not going to know, not going to be able to pick up on that. If you have it ticked to send to people in your organization, it'll automatically also grab the information about who that person is, which is brilliant because it's obviously tapped into your 365. So those are your options there. Specific people in your organization only, I guess, if you're just sending it to one team. And then there are a few more settings that you can pick there. So that's exactly the same thing there. You can do them anonymously as well. If you're sending out sort of feedback surveys to your internal team and you don't want it, you want it to be anonymous, you can untick the record name and then you won't get that information. And then there's a few sort of customizations here about how you want to see those responses and things. But like I say, very quickly, within about 5 minutes, you could have a form up and running. You could have grabbed that share link and you could have put that up on Teams. You could have emailed it out to your staff. You can have it up there pretty quickly.
Yeah, and this is a commonly, and we might show you at the end if we have time. Some of these things will be for one-off, and you'll just send them out, and some of them people will either have bookmarked favorite, or you'll have them in somewhere like SharePoint or Teams, like Lucy's about to show you.
Yeah, so this example here, so this is a Teams channel. You can go ahead and pin them to the top of that. So we have, for example, for our health and safety ones, we've got a health and safety team inside of Teams, and at the top of that, it's got our sort of incident notification forms, hazard notification forms, and things as well. Two benefits to that. It means that people think health and safety, they just go to that channel and everything's there. It also means that if they're out and about, they can jump into that on their mobile app, and they've got access to it straight there as well, which is great. It's all in one spot. Same for SharePoint. If you have a common area people are going to in SharePoint for things, you can pop these links in there. So as you can see, I've got the time off request one in here. It's going to automatically take whoever's in this over to a fillable version of that form. They'll be able to pop through and submit that as well. So we won't do one right now, but that's just a really good example of how that works, sort of embedding it in there. A couple of other little things. I mean, the amount of options you have when you're adding the extra questions and things are pretty brilliant. So if we have a look at this wee demo form here, you'll be able to see all the types of questions that you can add. You can also get smart with things like branching. So, you know, based on one answer, they'll either see or not see the next questions. But as you can see, ratings, dates, all sorts of things, rankings, you know, a bunch of different options there, which is pretty fantastic. I think that is all to show on them for now. You're going to see these pretty heavily in some of the demos that we're doing later on, because they are the basis of a lot of the automations we've got in place with our team.
Cool. Couple of questions. So firstly, another flying in. Firstly, is it available in all types of Office 365 accounts? That's from Linda. Yes. Well, actually, it will be available for the core ones that you can get via Connecting Up. So E1, Business Basic, Business Standard, Business Premium. If you just had an email only account, I don't know. I mean, you'll probably be able to access forms, but there might be limits. Power Automate is generally available for the bundled packages. So Business Basic, which is pretty low price, and obviously E1, which is free to not-for-profits. So if you get those from Connecting Up or via Connecting Up or via TechSoup, I should say, they should have everything you need to do what we're showing today.
I'll just add to that as well. There is a Forms Pro, which is sort of forms with a whole extra suite of features and things, which is a paid subscription, but you don't need that to do any of the stuff we're showing you today at all.
Yeah, we don't even have it, do we?
No, we do not.
Okay. Yeah. Last one. Can you quickly just re-show how to navigate from the login screen to Forms?
Yep. Absolutely. So say you are sitting in your calendar, we might as well start from there. Your little squares up the top here. You'll have all of your Microsoft apps here. Now, it might not be showing. If it's not showing, just click the All Apps, because I think it only shows the recent ones that you've been into there. But you should see it here as a wee option, and it'll just open it up in a new tab. Also, Power Automate has updated their logo recently. So that one we had in the start of the PowerPoint is dated now. There you go. It's very fancy.
Cool. And last question, are you able to populate drop-downs using other data sources on Forms, from Chris?
No, not at the moment. It's not quite that smart, unfortunately, which is a shame. I'd kind of hope that they would at some stage, but really the smarts is when you get the information from there and then what you do with it, rather than being able to feed it in the other way, unfortunately.
Maybe Pro.
Maybe Pro, to be fair, maybe Pro.
Feel free to outline in a later question, Chris, what you're trying to achieve, or just now, although we won't get to it until the next segment, just because we might have an idea. Cool. That's all.
All right. So we're going to talk about organizational flows now. As Conan mentioned, this is pretty much where you're going to get your biggest gains from. So what are organizational flows? They are sort of flows that you're using company-wide. Often these are what are going to be replacing your existing paper-based processes. Like we've mentioned, they can involve people external to the organization as well. And for us, our biggest wins in this 100% have been approvals and notifications. So I think last time we did a tally up, we thought we'd saved around about 180 hours by automating some of our approval processes. And that was a couple of years ago, because we've been using the system for quite a while. So you can see it's pretty powerful. And that would be things for us like, internal purchase approvals, credit card approvals. And that's mostly because they used to get lost on desks, not naming any names, and it would just mean that the process could take 2 weeks rather than 2 minutes like it can in the system now. So examples of what sort of things these could be, yep, approvals, document spending, leave, training requests, health and safety notifications. So we've got if people fill out an incident notification via a form, it then pings our health and safety committee directly within Teams. So they get a wee pop-up notification. It means that goes straight to them. You know, there's no barrier to that information getting to them. They get it straight away, which for health and safety is obviously very important. Induction, social media. So some of those pull-in connectors that you have for this are things like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, so you can get some really powerful data from there and then action on it. CRMs as well, so things like Capture CRM, Salesforce, again, they've all got tie-ins as well. So you might find, depending on what tool set you're using, that there are some really powerful things that you can do in there as well. So what else is essentially, they keep adding stuff. So, you know, by the time we actually have a look, we'll be out of date on it, to be honest. So the demo on this that we're going to do, and I'm slightly panicked that it's not going to work after the last one's not worked, so bear with me if that's the case, but we're going to be demoing an internal purchase process. So this is going to start with a form, it's going to run through an approval, and getting to see how an approval works is really the nuts and bolts of this, which would be great to show you, and then we'll show you some of the things that you can do after that. So I'll jump over here and show you the flow itself to start with, and then we'll actually do the activity. Now, because there was a decent number of people who are not as confident with Power Automate so far, we won't delve too much into the nitty-gritty of them, but hopefully some of you who are using this already might get a few extra ideas. So the one we're going to be looking at is the internal purchase approval. We'll pop in and go to edit it so you can see how this looks. Now, as you can see, it's a wee bit more complicated than the last one, quite a few extra steps. And I will emphasize the first couple just because, like I say, if you're going to be using forms to get your information into here, it's really important you get these first couple of steps nailed so you know what you're doing. So the trigger you're going to want to set up is when a new response is submitted. And as long as you are the person who made that form or you've got access to that form, you'll have them all on a wee list there and you just need to pick the right one. So we've got internal purchase there. The next step you're going to want to pop in is getting the actual details of that response. So that first step tells the flow to run when that action happens. The next one tells it to go and actually get the information of what that person submitted, because there's not much use unless you actually know what they've said. So again, you're just popping in the form there. If we have a click in there, you'll see that that first little bit that we ran actually gave us a little pop-out piece of content, which is the response ID. So we know that the response ID that we want to get the details for is what we want to pop into there. Each time we run one of these boxes, we get a whole nother set of information that we get to use, that we get access to as well. So a lot of the times these are just getting data that we can then go and do an action on. So I won't drill into the next two, but essentially what they are is they're getting the user details, so from Office 365 of the person who actually put the response through. The reason I do that is it just means that you can address the emails nicely to their first name rather than to their email address. It just makes it be a wee bit more personable. If you've got a management structure set up in Office 365 as well, that can be incredibly powerful. So the example we're using at the moment, the demo person I'm using, Megan, she has a manager set up. So we've gone ahead, found out who that is. And because of that, it means that when we submit the approval, it knows that it needs to go off to her to get approved, which is great. You might not need that. You might just have one person in your company who approves all of the approvals. So that can be quite a useful way to do it as well. What we are going to look at is this start and wait for an approval, because hopefully this is what you're going to be using pretty heavily in your organization. So all you need to do is click the little plus and then search to grab this particular action, they call it, and it's going to ask you a few questions. So approval type, very easy, everyone must approve or first to respond. So if you've got multiple people it's going out to, either you want them all to sign it off or you don't really care, it's just as soon as someone does, you're good. We don't often use the custom one. So because this is only going to one person, we've just clicked first. This is where you can decide sort of how much information you want to give. So the title of the approval they're going to get, per internal purchase, who it's been assigned to, which is that manager's email address. We've gotten that bit of content out, and then all of the details of it. Now I'm going to click in this box and it might freak a few of you out if you haven't looked at this, but as I mentioned before, every time you add one of those little actions, you get a whole lot of extra information. So the Get Manager action has gotten us all of these fields. The Get User Profile has gotten us all of the fields about the person that actually submitted the response. But right down the bottom, because it's the first one, Get response details gives us all of the information that they actually put in that form. So that's where we're pulling all of those answers through into this request details bit. The last step on this, simple condition. What do we want to do if they say yes to the approval? What do we want to do if they say no? If they say no, very easy. The person's going to go ahead and get an email saying that their request has been rejected. Vice versa, if they say yes, it's going to go ahead and get one there. Now, you can get even more sort of complex with that as well. So what we have set up with our ones is that once it's been approved, there's actually a wee notification that goes off to our accounts team as well. So they automatically get copied in on that step, and it just means that they're able to do things like provide purchase order numbers, know that there is a purchase going on rather than sort of having that happen out of the blue. So it's just quite a good way to get everyone in the loop. You might, you know, there might be other things that you, depending on the process that you're automating, that you want to set a loop in after that as well. So we are going to go ahead and we'll submit one of these. So you can say I also have the internal purchase one up here on Teams. So we're going to pop through this form and fill a few things out. So we do need the credit card. We are going to buy something from Countdown. We're going to buy coffee, $50 worth of coffee. Now you'll see there actually it says this value must be a number. So if I try and type text in, it's going to get grumpy at me as well. So you can see a bit of some conditions on there. And the purchases for me, it's one off. Cool. So we've submitted that now. So there's a few things that are going to happen now. This is going to get sent off to my manager for approval. So what I will do is I will bring that over. I've got her logged in on another screen. So this is what it's going to look like on the other side. So if you are someone who's receiving these approvals, you're going to get an email that has all of the details that you popped into that flow with an approve and reject button. Couple of really neat things about this. It is mobile friendly again. So if you're out on the go and you're getting these through, you can jump into that. If you have the Power Automate app installed as well, it's going to go ahead and let you sort of do it in that. It looks a wee bit different, but it's just as handy. You can add comments as well. Very important if you're rejecting it, probably to add a wee comment in. One of the neat things that's come out in the last couple of months as well is that there's now a sort of approvals app embedded within Teams. So if you don't see that already, if you click your little 3 dots, there'll be the option to add it from one of these as long as you got that sort of tapped in. And it does mean that you can actually do it all from within there as well, which if you live in Teams as much as we do, can be really helpful. So here you go. It's got all the history, and we can see that top one there is the one that we just submitted, 141. You can see the status is requested. It was Megan that sent it through. And we can pop in and actually approve it straight from here. Now what we're going to do is we are going to approve it from here. Click approve, and I'll show you what happens to the email because that's quite exciting. We'll go out of that one, back into this one. So all of the systems talk to each other. Those emails actually change, which is fantastic. So if you are someone who might forget what you've approved, you know, you're not too sure what's gone on, you can jump back into this and you'll be able to see that you've already completed it, which is just really handy. That record on here as well, obviously in Teams, also keeps the approval status, which is great. You can see very easily if there's anything that's outstanding on you, which down here we've got one of my other ones. And also if you're someone who's sending these off, you'll have a record of them all in here, which is great. But as you can see, very, very quick. You know, we have some approvals that we'll be able to get through that system from someone clicking submit on the form. It'll take 2 minutes to get to accounts because, you know, if someone happens to be looking at their Teams at the time.
And historically, I used to receive them, for example, I'd receive a piece of paper or a scanned piece of paper. And so, you know, getting it now that we're far more mobile and everything like that, getting the via email is obviously far more efficient. But also, I'd sometimes receive the paper request, and as I'm not the most organized person, I'm sure maybe everyone attending this webinar is highly organized, but maybe they've got people in their organization, managers that are not as organized. I would sometimes be like, did I approve that one? Because, you know, when you get a few, it is a bit of an issue. And sometimes double approve or not at all because I thought I'd done it. So that did help. Having that embedded system where I could see, oh, this one's already done and this one's done at this stage was really helpful.
Yeah. And it does, like, it's the communication side of things. It keeps everyone in the loop rapidly. So we're back with Megan at the moment, who sent that original request through, and you'll see she's got that email back to her saying, hey, it's been approved. And if Miriam would put any comments in, they'd be there. You might have your accounts team copied in on this, and that comment might be to accounts saying, hey, go ahead and give them the credit card or whatever it is they need. So really handy. And again, as Megan, she's going to have that approvals thing in here, and she's going to be able to go ahead and see the status of those approvals too. You can also cancel them. So if you change your mind and decide that you didn't actually need to, this is where you can pop in and do that as well. So they are powerful. The other extra sort of step that can be quite useful to add on to the end of one of these, depending on, you know, what sort of process it is that you're doing, is getting the data, getting that approval data and putting it into a spreadsheet in some sort of shared location. So when we looked at forms before and we saw the results, you could see there was the option to export it, download it into Excel and open it up, but it's not a shared file that everyone can actually go and sort of access at any given point in time and sort of edit. So you can add an extra wee step that will go ahead and pull out that information into a spreadsheet. So I'm going to pop into one that I had set up for that particular flow so that you can just see that that did actually work. So this is on a shared SharePoint site that that person has access to, and you'll see the details of that request. So it was Megan that put it through, Countdown Coffee, and if we keep going along, there we go, we can see who approved it, what the status was. If it was rejected, it wouldn't show on there because I've only set it to add into here if there was approval. It'll have comments. If you're doing things like annual leave requests, you might want to have some sort of centralized document that your payroll people have access to go and look at. You know, very much cash usage, you know, petty cash, all sorts of situations where this can be quite useful. For us, for health and safety, obviously, we like to pull that data out and put it into a shared location for the health and safety team as well. So many powerful things that you can do with it as well. Not just getting that information from the form, but then, you know, deciding what you actually want to do with it. All right, I think that is everything for that wee demo there.
Yep.
So we can jump over to questions if we have any.
Cool. Yes, we do have a few questions. So Sharon has asked, can approvals, oh, it's just disappeared on me as they're flocking in. Sharon's asked, can approvals be then saved in different folders? So I'm guessing you mean like a, feel free to follow up with us, a saved PDF or image or document based in a folder in SharePoint or OneDrive or somewhere? Thoughts on that, Lucy?
Yeah, so using that that sort of spreadsheet option that I just showed you there, you could set it depending on which approval process was being followed. You could have that data sort of pop itself into a sheet, and there's tracking on all of that so that you know that it has been approved. If you're just talking about within your email system, you know, you'll be able to set up a mail rule that every time you get one of them, it pops into a particular folder. They've all got a unique title based on the process that they're following, so you'll be able to file them away. It doesn't pop out a nice PDF with the signed form, unfortunately, but Adobe DocuSign
Can be
and
added, yeah.
one of the other ones, there's a few of those digital signature programs. So if you do actually need to have a proper sign off, they also integrate with Power Automate. So that's always an option for you.
Cool. Next question from Mez. Is there an option of attaching a receipt or an invoice?
Sort of. There is the option. Is it useful at the moment? No, it's not. So within a Microsoft form, there is a question type you can put in as uploading a file. Unfortunately, at the moment, it stores that on your own personal OneDrive. You can get it out of there and do some things with it, but it's just quite complicated. If you're interested in it, Google it. There are people who have done it, and I'd recommend just saving one of their flows and uploading it. The way that we get around it, so for our expense claim one, we get them to put all of the details in that form. We have a note at the end saying, if you have any receipts, please email them through to the little automated approval. So we've got it set up so that people will get an email to let them know when it's approved, and they just reply to that to the accounts team who are already copied in with a copy of the receipt. So you have a couple of options, and I'll show you a third option when we get to the attendee examples as well.
Cool. Next one from Anthony. What action is it in Power Automate that makes a flow appear in the built-in approval app? From Anthony.
It's very new at the moment, and I don't believe you can add them into the built-in approval app. So if you actually try and start an approval from that app at the moment, it's very limited on what you can do, and we haven't quite figured out how to get them talking to your existing ones yet, but I'm hoping they'll make that a bit more clear soon. It only popped up for us about a month ago, I think, so it's all pretty fresh.
If there's anything further on that, Anthony, please feel free to ask.
Happy to dig, very happy to dig.
Cool. And lastly, Glenn, can you add files or PDFs to something like, yeah, there's a repeat. Yes, Glenn,
Yeah,
hopefully we've answered that question. Not a perfect world there.
I suspect they'll change it eventually and make it a wee bit more user friendly. So
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if that's something we see pretty soon. People are definitely asking for it.
Very cool. All right, let's move on. Thanks for the questions, folks. Keep them coming.
Yeah, so we're up to attendee examples. We've only got a few of these as well, so there's definitely going to be time to talk through more of your specific scenarios if you want to put the details through. And one of these was expense claim, so we'll be able to show you a wee bit more of that in detail. So examples, these are things that we definitely get commonly asked for as well. Things like annual leave management. So you've seen how I'd suggest doing that with the use of a form to get the information about sort of who it is, when it is, and what they're doing. So you should hopefully, if you've been paying attention, know how you do that and know how you'd set up an approval. There are a couple of extra creative things that you could do that you could tap onto the end of that. So you could do things like adding in notification to payroll if you've got someone specific who sort of manages that. You could have it upload into that shared document as well, so they've always got access. You could have the system automatically block you out of office for those days, which I've attempted to set up, and we'll demo to see if that works as well. You could have it set you a reminder a week before you're booked on leave and remind you to do things like, I don't know, wrap up all of the meetings you've got that week, let your team know. You could have it pop a message on Teams the morning that you are starting your leave saying, hey, a reminder everybody, I'm on leave today. So the amount of sort of add-ons that you could do to that depending on the process that you've got are pretty phenomenal. We'll do a wee quick demo and see if I've managed to get that one going. So if we jump into, where was that channel we were before with the time off request? So we're going to pop in here and just request some annual leave. We're going to request it for, we'll go for Thursday. And again, we're in American time here at the moment. And we're going to go for 8 hours. Reason for leave, I need a break. Now, depending on if I've got my time zones right, this might actually do it for Friday, but we'll see where we're at. Cool. So your response was submitted. In theory, you're probably going to want to get it approved by your manager before you actually go ahead and block out your calendar, but we've skipped the middleman here just to see if we can get it going. So we're going to jump into the calendar. Here we go. So Thursday, we automatically have an all-day appointment. Blocking out on leave, it is set to set you as out of office as well. So if we jump over into the actual flow itself, you'll be able to have a look at how sort of those making calendar things actually look. So jump in, and there we go. We can see the history of how that one ran. If you ever want to know why one of your flows didn't run properly, this is very powerful. You see failures there, and it'll give you all the information as well and let you know what's gone wrong. So you're used to this, new response is submitted, get the details, and we've just got to create an event one. So it's grabbing the start date of that leave, and then I've just got a little formula there, like Conan said, there is sometimes low code. All it's doing is adding, I think it was 12 hours to the end date, just to make sure that you get the right day on there as well. So if you click advanced options, where we've changed things is this show as OOF is out of office. You can do things like busy, working elsewhere, and it just means that straight away, anyone who looks in your calendar knows exactly what's going on there. So it's just a wee example of sort of quite a useful wee tip you could add to that process there if you wanted to make things a wee bit quicker for your team. So expense claim processing is what some of you have asked about already. So like I said, the attachments thing isn't quite there yet, which is a real pain. There is that workaround with just emailing that through after the fact. You've still got the digital sign off there, which is, for us it's good enough, which is great. It's really beneficial. One other thing you might want to use though, do a wee screen share over here, is the approval of a file option that's built into Power Automate as well. So this is going to be a wee bit of a different way to get it started than the other ones we've looked at. There's no form involved, which shock horror. You never thought I'd show you one of them. So the example I've got here is I've got a wee receipt for an expense claim just saved to my OneDrive. I think it's for Crunchy. I grabbed that off the internet, so when that does come up on the screen, that's why it wasn't actually me. So when you tick any file, whether it's in OneDrive, SharePoint, you're going to see this little automate button up the top here. You've probably seen it before and wondered what it did, and you might have clicked on it. If we do the drop down there, so this request sign off is going to be there straight away, no matter, it doesn't matter if you've done any flows or anything before, request sign off is always going to be there. It's a built-in default one. There is also the Power Automate button where you can get a wee bit more complex. So If you don't want to use their built-in request sign-off, which is limited, it will do the trick for this. You can actually go ahead and create a flow as well, but we're going to just demo with this one to start with. And we'll show you what this looks like on the receiver's end as well as on this end as well. So the first time you do it, it's going to just make sure that you've got permissions to everything. There we go. So like I said, it's not picking up who you want to approve. You actually get to tell it. So because we've already got Miriam logged in, we're going to choose her and add a message. Please approve this claim. So run flow. So you might have, had a work lunch that you need to claim back because you were traveling or something. You might have the receipt saved up in your OneDrive. You can just fire this off to whoever it is that needs it. So we have sent that now. Let's grab emails. So Miriam, she has got an approval that's just come through. Again, you're familiar with what this looks like now, approval email. The neat thing about this, because it is a document that's actually been sent or an attachment, there is a link here, so demo receipt, and if we click on that, it's actually going to take us straight to it. There we go, so that's actually accessing the document that I had on my OneDrive. There we go, 75 cents for a crunchy. So she can see all the information she needs, and then she can pop back into here and either approve or reject it. I'm going to reject that because it's not a work expense. So again, Megan's going to get that same rejection email saying, hey, that actually hasn't been approved because you probably shouldn't have been trying to buy that with company money. So that's definitely one potential workaround you've got with expense claims, just doing it that way. It's really lightweight, really easy. If you did want to make it a bit more complex, add an extra step onto the end to say, to have that send off to your accounts team, this would be a way you could do it. Again, I'd say tick that. Jump into this create a flow option in that top menu and then just get things started from there. So say you clicked on request my manager's approval for the selected file. We're not going to build it, but I'll just show you what it does. It actually takes you through to flow, shows you what the template you've selected does. You can click continue and then it's going to take you to that build screen, so you can go ahead and cut some of those steps out if you want to. And you can add extra steps onto if you want to, so extra email notifications, that sort of thing. So that'd be a way that if you want to build a bit more of a robust, I guess, process around it, you could go ahead and do that. Right. So the last attendee example is regarding document review. So you might have sort of shared documents that you're working on. So it might be for, board. You might be sort of working on a shared board document that needs to go to them. It might be strategy documents. It could be a sales proposal. Depends entirely what sort of industry you're in. So Power Automate lets you send those off for approval, similar to what we just saw with the expense claim ones, really easily. People can give feedback probably by declining it and saying that they think XYZ is wrong. And again, you can also go ahead and add some sort of extra smarts on that. So this is going to look very similar to what we were just doing. Just jump into documents. We're going to jump into our strategic objectives. And again, all you are going to want to do is jump up, whatever doc it is, click the request sign off. Person's going to get that same email saying, hey, they've sent you this. You can add the extra comments that you want to. They're going to be able to get linked straight to that document, so they'll be able to jump in. They might want to make edits themselves and then approve it once they're happy with it. A couple of extra steps that you might want to add on to the end of something like that could be, say it is board documents, automatically firing it out to your chairperson potentially. You can change the location of the file. So once this PowerPoint in particular has been approved to go out to everybody, it might shift that into a separate folder that says ready for public consumption or whatever is appropriate for you. You could update the file name to say finalized. You could do a whole bunch of sort of extra smarts behind that as well as getting someone to sign it off. So hopefully that gets you thinking about a couple of ideas that might work with in your organization. All right, I think that's it for the examples.
Very good. Next slide. Wow, before we go into top tips, we'll save the rest for the end because we're approaching the end. So there's a few questions in there, but we'll get to them shortly. So Some top tips, as Lucy said, you just got to get in there and play around. Sometimes
you think you're doing it right and it's not working, and sometimes you are doing it right and it's just not working. The number of times I've walked away from a flow for a couple of hours and come back and done exactly the same thing and it's worked again. Just, yep, it does happen on occasion. You're not going crazy.
Particularly when playing, yeah. But we will say that we don't have that issue with the ones that we do. So expense claims and stuff, we don't have issues with them randomly working or not working. They pretty much just
No. Not once you've got it up and running. It's just sort of when you're doing your testing out and building and things, every now and then you can be like, why is it supposed to work? So just keep that in mind.
Without trying to discourage and also making sure we keep the options open. This could be something for you personally, but this could also be something where you've looked at this and gone, look, I don't have the time or the inclination to play around and build these, but there are others in the organization that may wish to. I would say that the critical thing is this is less about people that are technical or have an IT background and more, or a programmer or anything like that, and more about people that are kind of decent, maybe not too bad at problem solving, and wish to give it a bit of time. You're going to get more out of it with those people than you are with people that have a technical background. It is programming, just so everyone knows. When Lucy was showing the Flow backend, or Power Automate backend, it is programming, but without having to resort to the raw language. It's kind of like it's like a Lego version of programming in a way. So it's there is some complexity to it, but what you're doing is what Power Automate is allowing you to do is do programming without having to learn and fiddle with the languages and the intricacies of that, which is really cool. But so it doesn't need a programmer. You might look at it and go, oh, we need a programmer or a techie guy to do it or whatever, but you don't necessarily need that. Anyway.
You need someone who's passionate and willing to sort of get stuck into it. Probably the person who's going to benefit from having the process automated because they're going to be the most invested in wanting to make it work. Couple of other top tips. Watch out for password expiry. So we have a dedicated account that runs all of our forms and things, all of our automations. We realized about 6 months in that they broke every time its password expired, which I think must have been every 3 months at the time. So definitely recommend whack MFA on that account and put a complex password on, but set it to not expire, just so you don't have to go through and sort of get it reconnected every time that happens. And also be mindful of time zones. If you're doing anything to do with the calendar, Microsoft's backend is all in Universal Standard Time, I think it's called. So have a quick Google what other people in your time zone have done just to make sure you're on the right track.
Brilliant. How to start. So yeah, as kind of been covered, start with templates. Get used to playing around the back end, particularly with the personal ones, individual ones. Play with forms, I'd say. That's a really good one. Try, next time you have a need to do a bit of a survey or gather some information from your team, say, hey, I'm going to try this thing. Please be kind and have a go, and email it out just as a link, just a simple link that you email out, which nowadays should be pretty easy, and see how you find the results. It's going to take them a lot. It's going to be a lot quicker than them filling it out on a bit of paper or manually typing it into an email, copy and paste and that kind of thing. Next one, think of one process you're struggling with and give it a go, or a process internally that is causing a burden. Also, if you have a process that you'd like to discuss or you might like guidance on, then feel free to flick it to us.
And as Connor mentioned at the start, once you've got one in place, it's so much easier to get people using the same sort of system for another. You can just start adding more and more forms across the top of that Teams channel, or whatever it is you're thinking of doing. So definitely get started, see if it can be successful, and then take over the world.
Yeah. Where to from here? Rehashing a few of the things we said, but start thinking about the processes that could be automated and consider your time savings. Get started yourself. Find templates that could benefit you and go for it. And if you'd like some assistance, please feel free to ask us. Download the mobile app if you're wanting to play with the personal ones. It has a couple that you can tinker with. Feel free to read our blog on Power Automate. It was last year's blog, but have a look. And flow.microsoft.com is a good place to go. I think that's still active for some of the pages. Next question. Next slide, sorry. Cool. So have a few questions come in. So can a form, this is from Andy, can a form saved within a group you are part of be used for an approval process?
Yes, so as long as that form is something that you've got access to, you're good to go. So when you're in Microsoft Forms, you'll have your tab for My Forms, and there'll be a tab for forms that are shared with me. So you should be able to see all those group ones in there. If you can't see one, in the sharing links option when you're building a form, there's a collaboration link. So just give whoever it is that needs to see that collaboration link, and the first time they open it up, it'll magically pop its way into their shared with me forms.
Cool. Next one from Phil. Is approvals an app you add to Teams, or does it come when you add Power Automate to Teams?
So approvals is always sitting in there. I think that as a sort of back-end admin, you can switch it off so people can't have access to it, but by default it's enabled. Like I said, it's only started rolling out in the last month or so. So if you don't see it there, I'd say chat to whoever your admin is if it's not you, but otherwise it might just still be coming. But yeah, if you click on those 3 dots, if it's not showing already, and just search for approvals, it should show up for you.
Cool. Next one from Linda. Does this integrate with a WordPress website where queries are coming in from a pop-up?
Unsure off the top of my head, but I wouldn't be surprised. It's got to be in one of the 400 common.
Yeah, I'd say it likely is in some way. Feel free to elaborate on that, Linda, and we could do a bit of research for you. Next one from Mez. On the annual leave request, can you add an automated email out of office reply when someone emails you for the same period of leave you have on the form? I think you're asking, can you add it so it automatically injects content into your, or sets up your out of office at that time, maybe, or something else? Would you take, Lucy?
Yeah, I haven't tried to do it yet. It would be brilliant if it could, and I would be surprised if it couldn't. But that's definitely something we can have a quick check in and let you know, because
very
that would
likely
be very useful. Yeah, very likely.
Yeah, because for example, you could easily have that annual leave thing populate a calendar. A leave calendar, if your organization have a shared calendar, a leave calendar that you have, or your own calendar, of course, and likely accessing your email out of office is a possibility. A little more complicated than adding to a calendar, but it's very possible. Next one.
Oh, actually, I'll just follow up on that. I just had a wee quick search on the triggers, and you can set up automatic replies. Whee! That's exciting.
Good.
It's a test then.
Thank you. Good one. Mies again, expense claims. Can you add another field or option for adding an expense code?
Absolutely.
That could be a step potentially. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, if you've got say a list that of options they can choose from, then absolutely that'd be easy to pop in there.
Or you could have the step from, you could have the flow, obviously it went to the submitter, submitted it, went to the approver. You could have it go to the accounts team and they have to input a expense code, or no, sorry, not expense code, a purchase order code, but yes, you could have an expense code. Another one from Chris. Are there any recorded webinars to show these processes more slowly? These are too fast and made too many assumptions about familiarity with apps and programs. Yes, Chris, fair call. There's definitely some other webinars that we've done as well, which go into some of the other functions of 365. Also, yes, this is probably just to give a guide on what's possible rather than intended to replicate, but look, take your point and thank you for the feedback. This webinar will be available and could be used, pausing and progressing through it a bit more slowly might be beneficial. Next one from Mez. Do you have or know if there is still a template form for timesheets, and how will this time zone affect that? That's a good question with time zone. I'd say it'd be very it'd be associated with the user's time zone, but anyway, Lucy, you can answer that one.
Yeah, so there aren't built-in templates to Microsoft Forms when you sort of go on there to do it. Other people have sort of shared them and you'll be able to grab them. So it would really be up to you just to build a quick one based on sort of however your systems work, your processes work.
I'd say the time zone thing, it will likely, the submitter, the person that submits it, it'll take the time zone that they have either on the computer or on their Office 365 account, which you'd expect would be accurate. And if it isn't accurate, then you could find out pretty quick. It'll be
and
like
if you
GMT.
happen to have people working in a bunch of different time zones, that might be when you'd get a dev to take a quick look and help you set up a few things in your flow as well.
Yeah. Next one, just last one, unless someone else floods one in. So from Claire, in regards to passwords, if I create a flow under my work account where password needs to be reset each month, will that break the flow?
It will if you let your password expire and sort of don't go and update it. All you need to do if that does happen is if you pop into the online, the web portal for Power Automate, there'll be a little connectors button. It'll show you everything that's wrong and you just need to click reconnect again once you've reset your password. So it's not too much of a problem. But yeah, would recommend, best practice would be getting a separate account that manages that for you, but it's definitely not the end of the world if you run them under your own.
Cool. Wonderful. Well, that is all the questions, everyone. We do thank you very much for attending, and pretty much everyone stayed till the end to hear all the questions, which is great. If you have anything you wish to ask us, more detail, challenge one of our answers, or ask for more information on one of the answers we gave, feel free to email webinar@theiTteam.co.nz. And yeah, obviously the recording will be up in the coming days. Jane, you might be able to comment on that. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And as I said at the beginning, the recording and the slides will be sent out to everybody who registered probably at the end of today or tomorrow morning. And as Colin just said, if anybody wants to get in touch with the IT team, the email address is up there, or do get in touch with us. And also, we just have a quick survey that pops up at the end, and we'd really appreciate everybody just taking a minute or two to fill that in. But thank you both for today and for the last few webinars. And I think we've got another one coming up in the next couple of months, Colin.
Yeah, certainly will.
Yeah, so if people just keep an eye on the website, we'll be putting details of that up very soon.
Wonderful.
Brilliant.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much,
Jane.
Jane. Thank you,
Thanks
everyone.
very much. Cheers, everybody. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Cheers.